Our conception of hard work is fundamentally flawed. We conceive hard work in a purely materialistic sense, divorced from the higher spiritual principle. Our idea of hard work is either we laze around in our bed, either we stay at home, either we don't exert ourselves in a particular medium of life, such as in education or in our jobs, or we get out of bed, we go to the gym, we study hard, we work hard, we get money, we follow the system. But the big question is why? Why take the harder of two options? As we said, there is simply an irrefutable, fundamental, irrevocable principle of human nature, of basic psychology. We're given two options, one easier, one hard. You will naturally take the easier of the two options. And I don't believe you should be sad about that or feel guilty about it. You shouldn't feel guilty about lying in bed and not going to the gym. You have nothing to feel guilty about, if that's all it is. You need a why, a motivation. The word for motivation in the Arabic language is ba'ith, which literally means to rise up, something which literally physically pushes you up, rises your emotions, makes you physically unable to control yourself, contain yourself, to stay in your current state, but impels you to move forward and to change your situation. That's a spiritual principle. In the absence of that motivation, because this isn't something purely physical, in the physical sense, it's merely a calculus of pain and pleasure, where you choose that which is easier over that which is hard. To move beyond that, we need a higher principle, something beyond pain and pleasure, something beyond the short term, and that is the long term. It is the principle of the long term, of meaning, of value, sacrificing our imminent comforts, sacrificing some of our time, some of our energy, exerting ourselves, suffering fatigue, suffering loss and pain. We do these things for a higher reason. It is the subjugation of the flesh under what we call the principle of spirit. By spirit, I don't mean something vague, abstract and metaphysical, abstruse and esoteric, which we have no understanding of, but which we're pulling out of thin air to explain basic principles of psychology. By spirit, I simply mean the principle of value, the principle of higher purpose and meaning, the principle by which we, I would say, transcend, but it's not really transcending our physical natures as much as it is to bring our physical body in alignment with a higher purpose and principle. That is what I mean by spiritual. And that is the conclusion we came to, that people go to the gym rather than staying at home, because it is easier for them to do that. This is a principle that you will always choose the easier of two paths. So if you want to do something, you must make that thing you seek easier than not doing it. That's what guilt does. The guilt of living or of not living our dreams, of living an unfulfilled life, the pain of sacrificing our values, the deep spiritual pleasure and reward of living up to our purpose, of fulfilling a higher transcendental meaning and way of living. Ancient peoples took the idea of an oath incredibly seriously. In the ancient world, if you made an oath to someone, you would literally sacrifice yourself for that oath. You would literally suffer death 1,000,000 times rather than break that oath. And that's because the oath represents a deeper spiritual meaning and purpose. And that spiritual meaning transcends the physical. The conclusion we came to is that we need that deeper spiritual meaning so to organize our physical lives. That our physical life needs to be rendered subject under the higher spiritual principle, that our flesh, this body, needs to be subjugated under the spirit. And that might sound violent, it might sound unappealing. Why would I want to subjugate my body? It's because that you are not your body. You, in your deepest sense, are your spirit. The beginning of self-help begins with this spiritual understanding. It begins by orienting yourself and aligning yourself with a higher transcendental purpose and value. It is orienting yourself unto what we call the divine nature of the self, by which we mean the ultimate source of all value and purpose. It is your values, the meaning, which makes you go to the gym. It might even be the meaning of living a physically healthy life, but that's something long term. If we remove our capacity of higher abstract thoughts, there is nothing but the physical or present physical moment. Why would we sacrifice the comforts of the physical for the comforts of, or let's say the comforts of the imminent, the present, for the comforts of the future? It is only a deeper understanding of the flow of time which impels us to do so. So even that is a spiritual principle, the capacity for long-term thoughts, the capacity for deep introspection, the capacity to sacrifice the long term, to sacrifice the present for the future. That is ultimately the spiritual principle. That value of long-term health impels us to go to the gym. But let's say you're healthy, why do you keep going? Maybe there's a higher ideal of beauty, a higher ideal of living a beautiful life. And you see that as you transcend this hierarchy of values, when you keep asking the why, deepening down, why this, okay, to be healthy, why to be healthy, why do I want to live a good life? Our values are arranged in a hierarchy, deepening down into the ultimate, irreducible, most fundamental value, which is the meaning of life. That is what I mean by the divine principle. I can't take this video to explain a hierarchy of values. I plan to do so in a future video. But the purpose of this video is to bring attention to the fact that we need to awaken from our physical nature and orient ourselves to this higher spiritual nature. And I've alluded very briefly to what I mean by the spiritual in this sense. And I think it's a shame, but also really an immaturity that people get triggered by the idea of the spiritual in the modern age. Many people don't like to hear the word spiritual, don't like to hear the word divine. I mean, the first step of self-help in those cases is probably to grow up a bit and don't throw away a tradition of thousands of years of a philosophical and religious language, because it's important. We need this language to articulate that which is beyond the physical. As to those people who don't believe there is anything more than the physical, and it was only the body, in frank truth, I see no way to help those people whatsoever. And that's really the death of all self-help, because in that case, why do anything? But ultimately, we fundamentally intuit that there is more to ourself than mere body. We have values. We have abstract ideas and ideals and purposes to which we orient ourselves. There is meaning imbued in all things. And we sacrifice, or rather use the physical, so to realize the meaningful. Because it's not a sacrifice per se. We're not wasting away the body. What is the purpose of the body if not to be used towards a good end, towards the spiritual end? That's what I would recommend people to meditate upon, the subjugation of the flesh to the spirit. And I said that ultimately, self-help is about loving hard work. But in the last two videos, I've attempted to deconstruct the myth of hard work, so to realize the true meaning and reality of hard work.